Hello, everyone. Welcome back to SEP 271. Today, we're going to be going over Chapter 3 of the textbook. We're going to be going over some North American sport culture and values. So what even are values, right? So values are the basis for making decisions. They really are the things that are installed into us by either our culture, by the people who are closest to us or most important to us at all stages of life. Earliest is going to be our parents or our siblings. And then when you enter the realm of school, we have peer groups, our friends. They become larger influences in our lives. And as we get older, our values get a little bit stronger, and our teachers and our friend groups really continue to control our values as we move forward. And when we talk about values, we really see that they control a lot of what we do, right? How we think, our actions, our ideas, feelings, how we interpret certain events. They help us to assess the merit of basically everything in our life. Our values are going to help us to make decisions of good and bad, basically, right and wrong. And so if you think about this in terms of sport, one of our other strongest peer groups, right, is going to be our team. And our team is going to impact a lot of our values along the way. Same with our coaches. They're sort of that teacher figure, which can really influence and make our particular values stronger. And values vary across, again, time, location, and culture. So different ages, we value different things. When we're in a team setting or when we're in a school setting, we might value different things. And then when we're in our different cultures, be that ethnic cultures or maybe even religion, values may vary within those settings. And so really quickly, just to review these two particular definitions that we're going to be heavily talking about today. Social organization is the process by which human behavior becomes organized to deal with social situations in which people find themselves. Examples of this is sport itself, right? People organize in order to be able to deal with sport situations. We can be talking about religion, larger society, America, North America. Those are all examples. And then also culture, so the knowledge that members of a social organization share and that unites them and guides their behavior. And we've all experienced culture. We have a WVU culture. We have cultures within our departments, cultures within our majors. Okay, so just a couple things to note about culture, values, and social theory. Culture and values are typically enduring, meaning we keep them and they're reproduced from one generation to the next. When we grow up, our parents hold a certain set of values, and typically we also adopt those values more times than not, at least in the beginning. That might change later on as an adult. And also, all social theories identified in Chapter 1 concur that culture and values are essential to social organization. So if you take a really good hard look at yourself for a second, I would be willing to bet that the values that you have now, either entering college or a couple of years into college, were probably a bit different than the values that you valued when you were younger. Maybe now you are away from home, and so there are a few other things that your parents might have valued and pushed onto you while you were at home that now don't really matter to you, right? Or not as important. So it definitely depends on the different social organizations that you're in and the environment and culture that you're in. So this functionalist theory perspective says that these types of culture and traditions help us build strong common values together, right? And so that with all of us having the same common values, that strengthens social order and society. On the opposite end of that, we have conflict or cultural theory. And it says that ruling capitalist class shapes cultural values through social institutions in ways that benefit only capitalist interests to the detriment of less powerful and less influential. According to conflict theory, what we're seeing here is only capitalists, sort of on the top of the food chain, they're the ones who are shaping the values in society, right? And really it's only helping them. And we'll see this quite a bit when we get into the chapters about social stratification and the economy. Hegemony theory, so dominant class penetrates all levels of society with its version of cultural reality, meaning there's only one type of person that really benefits from society. And I'm sure we can all guess what type of person that is. And then lastly, we have feminist and race theories, where dominant groups form and shape culture and values through social institutions that keep women and minority racial groups subordinate and subservient to dominant classes. So again, dominant groups in terms of gender and in terms of race tend to shape the culture, right? We see that everything in society is sort of meant for a particular race and social class and gender, and it makes it that much more difficult for those who are not in that dominant group to live in society. And so sport is a microcosm of society, which means what? It means that sport should provide an indicator about society's culture, values, social structure, as well as social problems. So if we look at sport in terms of these different things, we'll see that society is sort of just a larger version of that, and that it's all reflected the same way. All right, so let's talk about the North American value system. It's important to set a definition on social values, right? And that is that they are culturally prescribed criteria for making decisions. So culture is really what's going to be driving the value system. This is not necessarily something that we know that we have right at birth. Can't really ask a baby what their values are, but as we mentioned earlier, it's likely that human beings are socialized or taught these values. Thus, we are taught to make judgments if people go against those values. And so some caveats to this value system. Diversity in North American societies precludes any universal holding of values. So this means that it can really prevent us from having any universal values because there's so much diversity, and the diversity is so strong in North American societies, right? So rarely will you be able to find like a pure ethno-state, right? Meaning that you've found some nation that was literally made up of one singular culture, right? Then you could possibly have a universal holding of values. But especially here in America and North America, that doesn't exist because there's so much diversity. Values are not always consistent with behavior. So we might have a set of values that we state that we have, but we don't particularly act upon those beliefs. In our Constitution, we have this line that all men are created equal, but in reality, in the past, and even now in modern society, that's just not evident, right? Equality does not exist, and minorities experience a whole bunch of injustices. Although I hope that we are working on that. There's a lot of work left to do, but hopefully we continue to work on this particular value of equality for all. Values themselves are not always consistent. So one key value in the United States, or in larger North American culture as well, is this value of individualism versus conformity. Compared to other countries like Asian cultures, like Japan, we are not a collectivistic country, right? We're more proud of individual successes, and that's where we want to put our emphasis on. As much as we strive for individualism as a benchmark of success, we tend to punish those who don't conform to our social system. As much as we love individualism, if you stray too far from the norm and don't conform to our society, then you are looked at and ostracized and looked at as an outcast. So again, there's that inconsistency there. If we look at the example of Colin Kaepernick and his fight for social justice and kneeling at the anthem, that can be seen as individualistic, fighting and exercising his rights to protest, but he himself has been ostracized and hasn't played in the NFL since 2016. And so there's a fine line. And so values themselves are not always consistent here in America. You can be an individual, but don't be too individual. Same with this idea of competition versus cooperation. Just another example there. And so we just talked about how there's no universal American value system, but there are themes in America about what values tend to be the most popular or held by the larger portion of American society. And this first one is success. So how do you define success? The highest indication of success, according to Americans, is economic success. Economic success tends to be the benchmark of American success. So how do we know this? Well, if you turn on the TV, we very much love to see people with lots and lots of money. So there's definitely an emphasis on economic success. Some other ways to define success can be achievements, right? We like seeing achievements, fame, and like I just mentioned, happiness tends to be just a little bit less like looked after in North American cultures. We're slightly tilted at putting value in being more successful rather than happy. A second theme, if the number one theme is success, is competition. So again, this comes from having a capitalist economy, right? We're very much in competition with anybody we can get our hands on. We tend to be a society that feeds off of contests and victories and sport, right? We love competition. We live in a winner-take-all society, and this is in all aspects of life, right? We want to be on the best team, we want to get the best grades, we want to get the lead in the school play. So really, we want to be at the top of the top in everything we do. And so what is the result of this value of competition and that people will do anything to succeed? Right? Well, we're going to look at this with just a little bit of a psychology perspective. If this is what you value, then whatever competition you do, your self-worth is going to be to some extent tied to these particular things, right? So the outcome of that is that if I'm not successful and I'm not successful in competitions, then I have two choices. I can, one, either feel really bad about myself, or two, I can try to be successful. And so if the stakes are even higher, I'm definitely going to cheat, right? Because I don't want to show myself to not be worthy, right? Not be successful. Here we start to see cheating across the board, right? It's because we want this feeling of achievement. We want to be seen and famous and rich. This is something that's fairly common in sports, right? Cheating is pretty common. Let's take a look at this really quick. So there was a steroids poll in 1995 that looked at, or rather interviewed Olympians, right? Olympic hopefuls. So really, really elite athletes. And they asked them two questions. The first question was, you're offered a banned performance-enhancing substance with two guarantees. One, you will not be caught, or you're not going to get caught. And two, you will win. Would you take the substance? So 98% of athletes said yes. And only 3 athletes said no. So the will to cheat to win is very much here, right? Let's get even a little bit crazier here, right? You're offering a banned performance enhancing substance with 2 guarantees. 1, again, you will not be caught, and 2, you will win every competition for the next 5 years and then die from the side effects of the substance. Would you take the substance? So we still have a large number of athletes saying yes, right? 62% saying, yeah, I can die after 5 years, that's fine. And so this will to cheat, right, is very extreme. And it's because the value of success in competition is extremely valued in our culture, right? This is why we cheat. And so if cheating is sort of this wrong side of the coin, what are the ways where we can achieve that are socially valued, right? That are accepted? So one is hard work, right? Just working hard, overcoming obstacles. Two, continual striving. So if you're successful, keep going. If you're unsuccessful, keep going, never give up. And then we also have delayed gratification, right? So deny immediate pleasure for later rewards, stay in school, do what you need to do, and it'll pay off in the long run. All right, so let's get a little bit into each one of these. So hard work. This ideal is very much tied to, if you remember back from the last chapter, hard work is a value, right? Being able to provide for your family is a large value. You had to work hard in order to survive. And that was way back in pre-colonial times to colonial times. This value's pretty much been around since the beginning of America. And so hard work is our number one thing. If we're looking at economic rewards mainly, then there's this idea that if you work hard, I will be rewarded economically, right? If I sacrifice years and years and years working at this organization or this company, then at some point I'm going to see some kind of economic return for working hard at this thing. And so the question is, whose hard work is valued? Do poor people deserve to be poor? Do those who are in lower socioeconomic status situations, less advanced situations, do they deserve their status as a low SES member? What if you were born into that and you work and work your whole life and you don't get out of it? Even though they worked very hard, doesn't guarantee the result that you're looking for, right? Doesn't guarantee those economic rewards. And so we see this problem here, right? Why work hard at something if I'm not going to be rewarded for my hard work? This is where cheating comes in, right? This is where we might get into more lucrative type ways of getting economic success, right? Maybe, dealing drugs, that can be lucrative and also very dangerous, but other more not legal ways of making money, people tend to fall in that because of this search for economic success, and because hard work doesn't always work for everybody. So the second one is continual striving. So what does continual striving mean? It means not only do we want to see somebody be successful, but after we see that person become successful, we don't want to see them stop trying. We want to see someone who's never satisfied, always striving to be better. We don't want to see a one-time champion. We want to see someone who's a 5-time champion, and who breaks records and things like that. Here we have a clip of a commercial that really just influences that, right? Never settle for what you are, even if what you are is really great. All right, so the next theme that we're going to be looking at is delayed gratification. So what is delayed gratification? Again, this is putting off something now, a sort of immediate reward so that you can get a bigger reward later, right? And so this video is of the marshmallow experiment, and I'm not going to show it right now, but if you want to watch it, I encourage you to watch it. The marshmallow experiment, they were giving children marshmallows, right? Putting marshmallows in front of them, asking them to wait. If they could wait, they would be rewarded with 2 or more marshmallows later. So as long as they weren't eating the marshmallows right away, they would be rewarded later on. And as you can imagine, the results are super interesting. I, again, encourage you to watch the video. So what we saw was that some kids have this innate ability to delay gratification. So they were able to wait. And then some kids don't. In the video, there's this one girl who literally, as soon as the marshmallow is put in front of her plate, the experimenter can't even leave the room before she eats the marshmallow. And so other kids do their best to dance around the marshmallow to try to fight back the urge to eat it. Really, this experiment is really interesting in terms of social psychology. And so how does it relate to real life? Well, those who can delay gratification, according to some research, tend to have higher SAT scores, so have higher educational attainment, lower body mass index, less substance abuse, and higher competence.
And so if you think about all of these things, right? The SATs, getting degrees in education, losing body fat, right? All those things require delayed gratification. You don't see results right away, but if you stick to it, then you start seeing results, and in the end, it pays off, right? So there we see examples of delayed gratification in everyday life.
All right, so getting to themes 3, 4, and 5 here. The first one was success, right? The second is competition, and now we have 3, 4, and 5. And so the third one here is progress. Very frequently, we look at how we are going to impact the future or how we work towards the future, right? This is extremely, extremely important in terms of American values, that citizens have these desires to focus on the future, always trying to improve. And so fourth overall theme is materialism. We can sort of reflect on this ourselves. If I ask you, why are you in college? Most of you might probably say that you're in college because you want to get a degree that will help you get the job and career you want, right? And so that you can get paid and make more money so you can have the best house. A lot of why we do things is, again, about economic success. It's about the ability to have things that most of us want. And so this desire to have more money is because we want to be able to afford things that we really want, whether it's a house, a car, those extravagant things that equal a good life. And then we have this last one, right? So this is, we kind of talked about this a little bit, this contradiction of the individualist society where we value individualism, but only within the bounds of the culture, right? That we're allowed to be individualistic. So even though we want you to be individualized, you should still be conforming to the groups that you identify with. And if you deviate, you lose social power. And we're going to be talking about social power a lot when we get to race and gender. But essentially, if you don't do what you need to do within the group, then you're going to lose your place at the table. Essentially, you're going to lose your place with the group. And so those are our main themes of American values, right? So competition, number 1 is success. Number 2 is competition. We have the strive for progress, materialism, and external conformity. Okay, so make sure you remember those, make sure you understand those. So let's talk about how this all ties into sport. So we can look at this quote from Ricky Bobby, right? Talladega Nights, if you ain't first, you're last, meaning that the person who's second, right? Or who's past second, third, fourth, whatever, those positions, those places aren't valued at all, right? So this obviously ties to both success and competition.
So here we see a couple more additional quotes from various coaches of various sports, and really just the emphasis that is put on winning.
And so here are some more things. We think about some things that are associated with not being successful, right? And so something really notable for, especially for head coaches, is that their jobs are really high in terms of turnover if you lose, right? So we've seen head coaches fired after losing one season. You can see why winning is very important. It's important because they need to be able to put food on the table. Granted, they are paid very well, and I'm sure they're all fine, and will find another job elsewhere, but you won't be able to keep your job as a head coach if you are constantly losing. So there's also this mentality of tying being an atrocity, right? Sort of debate whether we should even have ties, right? Should there always be a winner? And so soccer gets a lot of that criticism here in the US. We have those sudden death opportunities like NHL shootouts because we don't like ties. We want to see a winner. There's this increase of cheating, right, in terms of recruiting athletes, performance enhancing substances, manipulating equipment, Deflategate, all those things. So, resorting to cheating in order to come out on top. So, here, just a really good quote that the destination has become more important than the journey. Not something that we normally hear, but here in the sport world, the outcome, it's Super Bowl weekend this weekend, the outcome is more important, right? If you don't win the Super Bowl, what does that mean? Doesn't mean much for a lot of people. A lot of professional athletes only care about getting that ring at the end. And so is winning everything? Here we have a couple more videos for you that you can watch if you want. So obviously we're at this point where it seems like winning is more important than sportsmanship, right? Than the journey. What we end up seeing is that the competition is not as valued in the sport culture as we like to talk about it, right? Normally we want to say, yeah, it's the journey, but really winning, it ultimately comes down to winning. And so pretty much at the professional level, that is the job, is to compete and be successful. So we can see that this sort of varies depending on how, what level you are playing in sport. If we talk about the collegiate level, that can also look very different. Let's say if you are a Division I athlete versus a D3 athlete, there's sort of more at stake in terms of Division I because of the organizational pressures of being at a D1 school versus at a D3 school, right? High school is winning everything. We could argue yes, no, right? We tend to value more of the competition at this level, right? We'll definitely talk about this when we talk more about interscholastic sport, but we're starting to see high school sport get more and more competitive at different regions of the United States, right? Especially in particular sports like football and basketball. So things are sort of changing in terms of winning value there. And then as we go further down in terms of less organized sport, we're looking at youth sport, sort of more recreational stuff. We definitely see a decrease in winning is everything value. At the end of the day, we want to win, but what's on the line for winning is different for each level of sport. So there it is. There is chapter 3 for you. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts in your first journal. So I will see you all next week.